Okay, so I wanted just to go over a couple of the other ways that parties can discharge performance by agreement. So the mutual rescission is the one that I already talked about, where they both agree to get out of the contract. And again, this is that they, in fact, both agree. Not a problem there. A couple other options that they have would be a substituted contract. So a substituted contract is just where the parties enter into a new contract that specifically revokes and discharges the prior contract. To have an effective substituted contract, it has to be clear in the terms of the new contract that it is revoking the previous contract between the parties. But parties are always able to enter into new agreements, but they just have to be really clear if the new contract is in fact revoking and discharging a prior contract. Another way the parties can agree is called a novation. So a novation, this is not an assignment. So just be very clear, this is not an assignment or a delegation, but a novation is where the parties agree to replace one of the parties to the original contract with a new party. So all the parties agree that they're replacing one party with another party, and then the original party is basically removed from that contract. So that original party would be discharged from performance because they're no longer party to the contract. But again, the novation, you have to have all the original parties agreeing that this new party will come in and substitute for one of the original parties. And so it's not an assignment, it's not a delegation, it's not one party unilaterally deciding to assign their rights and giving notice to the other side, or one side unilaterally deciding to delegate their duties. This innovation is where the parties are all in agreement to let a new party come in and substitute for an original party. And then the accord and satisfaction, which in my experience practicing law was one of the most misunderstood concepts that people have. In accord and satisfaction, there's two distinct pieces to it. And I think we've already talked about it, but I'm going to go over it again just to make sure everybody's good with it. Accord is when the parties agree to a new agreement that basically replaces the old agreement, and then the satisfaction is the paying off of that new agreement. So it's very specific circumstances. So again, I owe you money and I'm making payments to you, and I still owe you like $5,000 more. And you can get it $100 a month at a time, or I can come to you and offer an accord and say, I will pay you $3,000 today in full satisfaction of the $5,000 I owe you. If you agree to those terms, our accord is that you're agreeing to accept $3,000 in full satisfaction of the $5,000 I owe you, and the satisfaction would be me paying you the $3,000. Once you have the accord and the satisfaction and payment, then that discharges performance under the original contract. You cannot come back after me for the remaining $2,000 that I did not pay, because we have a valid accord and satisfaction. As I said, a lot of times people misunderstand that, and they think if they just write the magic words accord and satisfaction on a check or a payment, that means they don't owe anything else. And that's not what it is, because to have a valid accord, you have to have a legitimate agreement between the parties. It's not something parties can unilaterally do, but it can be a way. If you work with debtors, if you work with creditors, you might be negotiating some accord and satisfactions to get money paid off sooner. And again, it is sometimes worth it to have more money now in your pocket than to collect it little by little over the course of the years, or to pay it off now as opposed to paying little by little over the course of the years. So those are the other ways that you can discharge by agreement. Okay, so that concludes chapter 7. There will be an assignment on this, but before the assignment, you will find in the materials a scenario with a lot of questions about assignment, delegation, and beneficiaries. And there'll also be answers provided for that. So I want you to go through that and practice it. And then in one of our meetings through Zoom, we will go through it together. But you need to practice it on your own to see if you really understand it. Because if you don't, when it comes to test time, it could be very challenging for you to answer these questions. So it's not official review for the test, but it is a way to review for the test and make sure you understand the concept. So make sure you look for those in the materials. And again, any questions on anything, please feel free to email me or to put a question in the discussion board that's here in Brightspace.